You've heard about Jesus from churches, sermons, and books, but there's a side of him almost no one talks about, a side that Islam has preserved for centuries, yet hidden from the mainstream. What if the Jesus you thought you knew was only half the story? For many of us, our first image of Jesus comes from Sunday school lessons, paintings on church walls, or sermons from preachers. These sources shaped not only how we imagined his face, but also what we believed about his identity, his mission, and his role in the world. But here's the question most people never stop to ask: is that the complete picture of Jesus? Or is there another version of his story? One that has been safeguarded for over 400 years, waiting to be discovered. When I first opened the Qur'an, I didn't expect to find Jesus mentioned at all. What I found instead left me stunned. Not only is Jesus spoken of with deep respect, but entire passages are dedicated to his miraculous birth, his mission, and the honor God gave him. It wasn't a Jesus erased or denied, it was a Jesus preserved, protected from the confusion of later interpretations. This hidden side of Jesus in Islam doesn't reject him, it elevates him. It presents him as a prophet of immense honor, born of a miraculous virgin birth, empowered to perform miracles, yet always connected to the will of the Almighty. It strips away centuries of theological debate and shows a Jesus who points clearly and directly back to God. And perhaps the most shocking part, the Qur'an reveals details about Jesus that challenge the mainstream Christian narrative. Details about his crucifixion, his role as Messiah, and his eventual return at the end of times. So today, we're going to uncover the hidden side of Jesus that Islam reveals, a side that most people, Christian or Muslim, have never fully explored. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change the way you see Jesus forever. One of the most striking revelations the Qur'an gives us about Jesus is his true role, not as God, nor as the literal Son of God, but as a prophet chosen and honored by the Almighty. For many, this is shocking because the Christian tradition often places Jesus in a divine position, making him equal to God. But when you open the Qur'an, you discover something different, yet deeply profound. Jesus is presented as one of the greatest messengers who walked the earth. In Islam, prophets are not ordinary people. They are chosen by God to deliver his message, to call people back to the worship of the one true Creator. The Qur'an speaks of Jesus with deep respect, highlighting his purity, his miraculous birth, and his extraordinary mission. But instead of making him divine, the Qur'an emphasizes his complete submission to God, reminding humanity that even someone as extraordinary as Jesus lived as a servant of his Creator. This perspective doesn't diminish Jesus' greatness. In fact, it elevates him. By presenting him as a prophet, Islam protects his honor from being misunderstood or misrepresented. He is not stripped of his miracles, his wisdom, or his role as Messiah. Rather, those qualities are framed as signs of God's power working through him. Jesus speaks, acts, and performs miracles not by his own will, but by God's permission. This places him exactly where he wanted to be, pointing humanity back to the worship of God alone. For Christians, this understanding may sound unfamiliar, even unsettling. But when you reflect deeply, it makes sense. If Jesus was a prophet, his greatness lies not in being worshipped, but in guiding others to worship the one who sent him. This view not only preserves his legacy, but also clears away centuries of theological confusion. So, in the Qur'an, Jesus is not erased. He is not diminished. He is restored to his true role, the role he lived, taught, and embodied: a prophet of God, a messenger of truth, and a guide to righteousness. When most people think of the virgin birth, they immediately connect it to the Christian faith. It is often presented as a miracle unique to Christianity, a proof of Jesus' special status. But what many don't realize is that the Qur'an doesn't just acknowledge the virgin birth, it powerfully affirms it with details that leave no doubt about the miraculous nature of Jesus' arrival into the world. In the Qur'an, Mary's Maryam is described as one of the most honored women in all of creation. Her story is preserved with great care, showing her devotion, purity, and chosen status. When the angel appears to her, announcing that she will bear a child despite never being touched by a man, her shock mirrors the natural human reaction. "How can I have a son when no man has ever touched me?" The angel's reply is profound and simple. Thus does God create what he wills. When he decrees a matter, he only says to it, "Be," and it is. This moment captures the essence of divine power. The virgin birth, as described in the Qur'an, is not a matter of biology or science. It is a direct sign of God's command, a miracle meant to remind humanity of his limitless ability. Just as Adam was created without a father or mother, so too was Jesus created without a father. Both serve as signs, pointing back to the Creator's unmatched authority. By affirming the virgin birth, Islam removes the idea that belief in miracles is exclusive to one tradition. Instead, it shows continuity in God's plan, emphasizing that Jesus' birth was part of a divine design to guide humanity. The Qur'an doesn't present Jesus as divine because of his birth, but rather as a miraculous sign of God's will, just like other prophets who were supported with unique miracles. This understanding not only honors Jesus, but also highlights Mary's unparalleled role. She becomes a symbol of faith, patience, and divine favor, remembered by Muslims around the world as one of the purest women to ever live. The virgin birth in Islam is not denied, diminished, or reinterpreted. It is celebrated as one of the greatest miracles in history, a moment that demonstrates God's power and the honored place of Jesus in his divine plan. One of the most overlooked truths about Jesus in Islam is that the Qur'an doesn't just acknowledge him as a prophet. It also calls him Al-Mas, the Messiah. This is a title loaded with meaning, and yet its true significance is often misunderstood or completely overlooked outside of Islamic teachings. In the Christian tradition, the title Messiah is often tied to the belief that Jesus was sent to save humanity from sin through his sacrifice. But the Qur'an presents a different, yet equally powerful perspective. By calling Jesus the Messiah, Islam affirms that he was chosen by God for a unique mission, one that set him apart from all other prophets. The Messiah in Islam is not about divinity, but about honor, responsibility, and divine appointment. Jesus was given a special role among the children of Israel, to guide them back to the straight path, to confirm the law of Moses, and to deliver new wisdom through the gospel. He was a reformer, someone sent to purify faith at a time when people had strayed far from God's commands. His title as Messiah reflects his status as a leader, a guide, and a sign of hope. The Qur'an makes it clear that Jesus' messiahship was not tied to worldly power or political rule. Instead, it was about spiritual leadership and serving as a living sign of God's mercy. He healed the sick, raised the downtrodden, and gave hope to those who had been forgotten. His miracles, his words, and his life all pointed to his role as a chosen Messiah, not a king on a throne, but a servant of God leading with humility and truth. This understanding shifts the focus away from worshiping Jesus to following the God he worshiped. It shows that the Messiah was not meant to replace God or share in his divinity, but to bring people back to the worship of the one true Creator. So when the Qur'an calls Jesus the Messiah, it is not just a title. It is a declaration of his honored mission, his unique role in history, and his place as one of the most important figures ever sent by God to guide humanity. When most people hear about the miracles of Jesus, they think of the Bible's accounts healing the blind, raising the dead, and feeding the multitudes. What many don't realize is that the Qur'an not only affirms these miracles, but also reveals details that are often unknown in other traditions, and emphasizes a crucial truth. Every miracle Jesus performed was by the permission of God. In the Qur'an, Jesus' miracles are not a sign of his divinity, but of God's power working through him. This changes the entire narrative. Islam preserves the image of Jesus as a humble servant of God, chosen to display extraordinary signs, not for his own glory, but to point people back to their Creator. For example, one miracle uniquely mentioned in the Qur'an is when Jesus, as a child, formed a bird out of clay, breathed into it, and by God's will, it became a living creature. This extraordinary event highlights that his abilities were never self-originated. They were divine gifts granted to him for a purpose. The Qur'an also mentions that Jesus healed the blind and the lepers, raised the dead, and spoke to people even as an infant in the cradle. All bi idnillah, meaning by God's permission. This phrase is repeated to ensure that no one confuses the miracles as proof of Jesus being divine. Instead, they are proof of God's mercy and power, shown through his chosen messenger. By emphasizing this, Islam shifts the focus away from elevating Jesus to godhood and instead highlights the one who gave him these abilities. The miracles were not about making people marvel at Jesus himself, but about awakening their hearts to God's reality. Jesus was a sign, a bridge pointing directly to the Creator. This perspective adds depth and clarity to the story of Jesus. Instead of creating confusion about whether Jesus was man or divine, Islam presents a clear picture. He was a human prophet, honored and beloved, through whom God performed great wonders. His miracles were never meant to center on him, but on God's limitless power. In this way, the Qur'an reveals a side of Jesus that is both awe-inspiring and deeply humbling, a man chosen by God, a servant who performed extraordinary miracles, yet always pointing back to the one who sent him. One of the most astonishing truths that Islam preserves about Jesus is the belief in his return at the end of times. While many Christians are familiar with the second coming, what Islam teaches about this event is often unknown. And it reveals a side of Jesus that reshapes how we see him. The Qur'an makes it clear that Jesus was not crucified nor killed, but raised up by God. He was preserved not as a spirit separated from his body, but in a state known only to God. This preservation points to a future role that Jesus has yet to fulfill. According to authentic Islamic teachings, Jesus will descend once more to the earth near the end of times, not as a new prophet bringing another message, but as a follower of the final message revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. His return will serve multiple purposes. First, it will expose falsehoods and correct the misunderstandings that arose about him. He will clarify that he was never God, never the literal Son of God, but always a servant and messenger of the Almighty. Second, he will bring justice during a time of global chaos, standing against tyranny and deception, including the greatest deceiver known as the Antichrist, Dajjal. What's remarkable is that Islam describes his return not in vague terms, but with striking details. He will descend near a white minaret in Damascus, unite people upon truth, and lead them in worship of the one God. Far from claiming divinity, he will pray behind the leader of the Muslim community, showing his humility and submission to God's final revelation. This vision of Jesus is deeply humbling yet profoundly powerful. Islam honors him not only as a prophet of the past, but as a figure whose role in the future will confirm everything God revealed. He is alive, preserved by God's will, and will return to remind the world of the truth that has always been consistent, that God is one, and all prophets, including Jesus, called humanity to worship him alone. In this, Islam reveals a side of Jesus that's rarely spoken about, not just a prophet of history, but a living sign of God's plan for humanity's future. So what does all of this mean? It means the story of Jesus is far bigger, far deeper, and far more powerful than what most of us were ever told. Islam doesn't reject Jesus, it preserves him. It strips away the confusion, the debates, the man-made interpretations, and presents him as who he truly was: a prophet, a messenger, a servant of God, and a living sign for all of humanity. The Jesus revealed in Islam is not only the miracle, born child of Mary, not only the voice of truth against falsehood, not only the messenger who brought light to his people, but also the one who will return, alive, to complete his mission and stand against deception in the end times. And that hidden side of Jesus changes everything. It shows us that he was never forgotten, never abandoned, and never misrepresented in the eyes of God. His story is not over. His truth has not been erased. And for anyone searching, Christian, Muslim, or simply a seeker of truth, this is a reminder that sometimes the answers we've been missing are found in the very places we least expect. The Qur'an doesn't take Jesus away from you. It gives him back to you, in clarity, in honor, and in truth. So now the question is, are you ready to see Jesus as he really is?